Lucky you.
36 best
Tune
holes in
into
golf.
Alternate Shots podcast,
Barney's Army.
where we talk about golf,
Sandy.
poker,
James Bond.
horse racing,
Double.
classic movies.
Zenyatta.
We have no script.
Down the stretch they come.
We are glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
So when Dick won the club championship, I think in '66, I won it the next year, I think it was '67. It's so long ago, I don't remember. I remember winning, but I don't remember the year. So back then, the club championship was a big deal. And it was always on Labor Day weekend. And they had to have a qualifying to get 16 players, I believe, because you had so many good players. I don't know if it's, hopefully it's
Same today.
Same way today. And it was Labor Day weekend. And it was a semifinal match. And Dick was one up going to 18. And you guys have been there longer than me, but I've never seen anybody do this. He drove in the right rough and he caught a flyer and he flew the green. I don't think I've ever seen anybody fly the green on their second shot on 18 West. Very rare. And it went over on the path, you know, the path between 1 West and 10 West. So all the members came off the terrace. You know, there might have been 75 people watching this match. And Dick is on the path and my dad's standing there. And he turns to Dad and says, "Dad, do I get a drop?" Well, Dad, dumb like a fox, he's not going to give his kid a drop, you know, in front of all the members and stuff. And my dad says to him, "You've got 14 clubs. It would behoove you to pick one." So he makes bogey and then he wins on the 19th hole. And afterwards he says to my dad, "You sure about that drop?" He said, I'm sure that you did get a drop, but I wasn't going to give it to you because where am I going with this? You know, I'm the golf pro here. I'm going to make a whole bunch of enemies. He said, "But in the future, you should have brought your opponent over." See, he said, "I think I get a drop, you know, and then you could look in the rule books and stuff like that." But he said, "Well, you almost cost me the club championship." He said, "No, you cost yourself because you didn't know the rules." So, but I wasn't going to give it to you. So I'm looking at this picture and I can just see that whole scene there with Dick say, "Dad, do I get a drop?" Pick the club, son.
You're on your own here.
Yeah, you're on your own. Make a decision, you know. We were talking 59 Open, maybe?
59 Open, yeah.
The weather, and as you already said, you know, that they didn't play 36 because of the weather. You know, it's funny, I asked my dad one time about that Open, and he said I should have won that tournament. You know, I'm thinking, and when I asked him, I was old enough to realize him finishing third was an unbelievable feat, actually. I said, "What do you mean you should have won?" He said, "I didn't hit my irons good that week." And I said, "Well, how could you finish third in the Open and not hit your irons well?" He said, "Well, because every shot I had, I'd hit every shot 500 times at those pin placements, you know. So I saw the right thing every shot, and I was a little bit too conservative. You know, I knew the course was playing hard, and he got it up and down, I think, out of every bunker though. And this is an interesting story, back to the uneducated genius. So we knew the wedge that he had. He had a McGregor wedge back then. Dick and I have photographic memories. Craig and Butch, Craig wouldn't know what day it is. He wouldn't even know if he won the Anderson if he asked him today. He would. I'm just needling him, by the way, because he's not here. He would know. He would have known that he won because he beat Sidoroff in Corville in the finals. But Dick and I had like photographic memories. And so my dad passes away and he was living in Houston at the time. And Dick goes over his condominium. He's got all these boxes of clubs in his closet. So he's looking at them and he takes out this wedge and he says, "Yeah, that's the wedge that Dad used in 59. And he puts it down and he can't believe how much loft is on the wedge. So he goes to his club, River Oaks, and he puts it in the lie loft machine. And it was a 64-degree wedge, 1959. Wow. So maybe Dave Pelz didn't invent it. How about that? Having because Dad knew that speed meant trajectory and spin. He also knew a wing foot. If you couldn't play bunkers, you couldn't hardly play the course. So he had Mo Della Porta add loft to this wedge where he could swing as hard as he could and the ball would just come out high and soft. So he figured that out in the 50s. So that could have been the first lob wedge.
Did Seminole contribute to his sand play? Because that place is loaded with bunkers.
Yeah, I think so. But you know, might even go back to that silly story about him just hitting balls on the beach, you know, and because as you know, back then they didn't have teachers. There weren't videos on how to do this. There weren't really books. In fact, then the players really wouldn't listen to a teacher. They'd listen to each other.
Right.
So they came from an era where if you couldn't play, we weren't going to listen to you. Now that's not right or wrong. It's just the way they grew up. But you could also make the case the great players from those eras played better longer because they didn't have information. They owned their own swings. These kids nowadays, they go to a different teacher every 5 minutes. You know, the story, I'm not going to tell which player it was, but Butch got tired of seeing the posses. You know, he's out there on tour and here comes his player with 4 guys, you know, trainer, the psychologist, nutritionist, and the guy that tells them what color boxers to put on, you know. And I guess one day he said to the psychologist, I really enjoyed that session you had last night with so-and-so. And the guy goes, what do you mean you weren't there? He says, I know, why are you here? I respected your time with him, right? This is my time. I don't want you here. I don't want any of you here. You're a distraction. And I don't distract you when you're working with the player. So I think it's unprofessional for you to be here. You're not respecting my time with my player. And I do think he added, knowing Butch said, and the truth of the matter is, without me, you guys don't have a job. So
All right.
that's straight. But you know, nowadays they have so much information. I don't know if it's good. I think, you know, the Palmers and the Gary players and the Trevinos and the Caspers and the Nicklases, I mean, they, you know, they'd get a tip every now and then from somebody, but they own their own swing. It was theirs. It wasn't somebody else's. It wasn't some guy looking at TrackMan who couldn't break 85 telling him what to do. And I'm not knocking all those guys, by the way, but I'm just not convinced that the great players today are better than the great players of yesterday. There's more good players for sure, no doubt about that. But the great ones, I don't know. Let's throw Tiger out of the equation right now, but who's playing today that would back Palmer off, or Gary Player, or Lee Trevino, or Billy Casper? Or they'd be afraid to get on the tee with him? I don't think too many. Raymond Floyd, even. Do you think Raymond would back off one of these guys with that funny looking swing? Tom Watson, you know? So I think it's interesting, but I think all of those guys owned their game. They owned it. It was them. They could
Chichi Rodriguez.
Yeah, it's just interesting watching. I see a lot of beautiful swings, but I don't think a beautiful swing makes you a beautiful player, because maybe even that little story I told about Jay, you know, did they ever figure out? Remember the guy Mike Donald who almost won the Open at Medina?
Yep. Yes.
He told me a story recently, which is great. He lost his game and playing the Nationwide Tour, I think they called it. And he was playing with a guy late in the year who was going to finish high enough to get his card. So he said to Mike, you know, what do I need to do on tour? He said, well, at some point you're going to have to shoot 67 on Sunday, playing with Norman or Seve or Raymond Floyd or Jack or somebody. Guy goes, I'm not intimidated by anybody. I play my own game. And yeah, okay, good. Go get him. So of course the guy goes out and misses his card. And he sees Mike the next year and he says, you know, you were right. He said, well, I knew I was right, but you didn't know what I was actually telling you. You had no idea what I was telling you. So you're going to go out on tour and you're going to walk on the range, and Ernie Els is going to be sitting there talking to Phil and Norman and Nick Price and Lanny Watkins, you see, and they all know each other and they're comfortable. They've played with each other 500 times. They've played this tournament 20 times. And you walk on and you are less than zero to these people. They don't know you. They don't care about you. You are not one of them until you play with him on Sunday and shoot 66 or 7. He said, I remember doing it, I think he said at Westchester, playing with Floyd and maybe Norman. And the next week I walked on the tee and Raymond Floyd turned to me and said, hey, Mike, how you doing? But until then, and so this guy thought, I play my own game. It's not that, it's a comfort zone. Once again, back to Craig saying about Dad. I thought that was, 2 months ago, he says this. I think Dad thought he was one of them, And if you don't think you're one of them, I don't think you can compete.
So
And if you don't have your own swing, whose swing are you going to use on the back 9 on Sunday?
So I did want to ask you about 2 guys in that particular line, Zalatoris and Cam Young, who've come up pretty quickly, right?
No, I think that they didn't have that. I think that they both had that inner arrogance. I don't mean that in a bad way,
right?
Because they certainly played that way. I watched Cam, last year played so well in the majors. He never looked like the moment was too big for him, and certainly not Zalatoris. So, Zalatoris played good at Winged Foot when he was on the Korn Ferry Tour. I think he finished 5th or 6th in 2020. But that's the part that I think is hard to teach. Cam Young, Sleepy Hollow kid, I guess. He walks around like I'm good. He could have won the Open at St. Andrews.
Yep.
He could have easily won that Open. He was playing with Cameron Smith the last round.
How does Smith make 4 on the road hole behind the bunker?
There you go. So and that's also interesting. If he makes 5 or 6, Cam Young wins the British Open maybe, or Rory. I remember asking Bob Golby one time. Bob finished 2nd at Open Hills to Littler, and Player beat him at Aronimink by a shot. And I said to Bob, what's your memory of Open Hills? Did you have a chance? He said, well, Littler, I think 282 won, so over par 1. He said, well, Littler shot 35, the back 9. Sometimes the guy shoots 37 and the other guy wins, Because 37 is not a bad score if you play the back 9 at Winged Foot in the Open, would it be? It wouldn't be choking. And he said, Gary at Aronimink missed 10 greens and got it up and in 10 out of 10 times. He said, sometimes a guy gets up and in 8 out of 10 and the other guy wins. So as you said, he didn't have to get that up and down for 4, right?
Right.
And so there's such a confluence of events that can go into winning a tournament. And a lot of the times it's not, Cam didn't lose that. Young didn't lose that tournament. Smith won it,
Yeah, I don't even think Rory lost it. I think Rory played
No.
well. They weren't going in.
No,
But
he missed every putt.
Your dad
He
may
did-
win the Open in Winged Foot if Billy Casper doesn't have 27 putts around, right? Hello?
But that's the beauty of the game is you can't play defense, I remember when Tiger won the Masters in 2019 and they compared it to Jack in 86. I said, there's no comparison. Jack played the last 10 holes in 7 under with a bogey. Tiger hit the back 9 2 shots back with the best players in the world. He played the back 9 and 1 under, and they all parted like the Red Sea, which they did, by the way.
Yep.
Every one of them parted. They handed him the tournament. I'm not taking it away from Tiger, because once he saw those guys hitting the ball in the water on 12, walking down the 11th fairway, he turned it into, you guys said you wanted a piece of me, now you're going to get it. I'm relatively healthy. You like that injured Tiger? I'm not injured right now. And he, from there, played beautifully. But they all just folded. Every one of them. It was kind of weird. Good players, too. Guys that were good.
Yeah, that was
Jack
some
didn't-
back 9.
Jack
but
didn't
Nicklaus-
shoot 35 being 2 shots back and win. He shot 30.
He
With a
bogeyed 12, right?
That's exactly
12,
right.
yeah.
In fact, Jay played with him on Saturday. I caddied for Jay. And this is my best caddy story. So Jay was playing good Sunday. And we got to, we got to 15, 3 shots back. We're ahead of the leaders. We're ahead of Jack by a couple holes. And it's hard to believe it had wooden clubs back then, because it doesn't seem that long ago. And, in a couple of months, we're going to see all the highlights of Jack winning and stuff. They didn't have metal woods. So on Tuesday, there was a sprinkler out on 15. It was 234 to the front. And Jay said to me, well, if we're not ahead of that, we're not going for it. He liked to make decisions because he couldn't overpower a course. So he had to kind of chart his way. He said, I can't afford to make stupid sixes on these holes. I have to do some, I have to figure out a way to get it done differently. So I think he's 5 under for the round, just hitting it good. And Jay was good. He could hit the ball right in the middle of the club face almost every time. And so he hits a nice drive, boy, and I'm looking for this sprinkler because I want to send him. You never know. You make eagle, right? You just don't know. And we get there and he's 7 yards behind the. Have you guys heard this story? It's
Nope.
pretty funny. So back then I was running pretty good. I was orbiting the universe, I'd say. And I wanted him to go. And my dad used to tell me that you gamble when you're swinging good, not when you're swinging bad. How about that little tidbit? Jay was really swinging good and it was warm out and he had 241 to the front, which is a lot, you know, in those days. And he says, how far do we got? And I lied. I took the 7 yards off. I said, you got 234, pins on 16. Oh, that's a perfect 3-wood. So as soon as he says it, I go, what the hell am I doing here? It's Sunday of Augusta. I've just given him the wrong yardage over water. You got to be the dumbest guy that ever lived. So now I'm starting to think, I got to get out of this. I got to say, I added and subtracted. I got confused with I didn't get a good upbringing there at Iona Grammar School. You're good at math. As I'm trying to figure out how am I going to stop them, the handheld CBS cameras running behind us. They're going to show this shot live. So now I'm
It gets
really
better.
Oh, yeah.
oh God. So now you guys caddy, so you understand this. So I'm sitting out there going, what am I doing? You know, this is all happening in 20 seconds. You know, my life is going in front of me. And by now he's over the ball. So I said, well, here we go, boy. You know, and he hit the most beautiful shot I think I've ever seen him hit. This big high draw, and it was there the whole way. And when he started his downswing, I think I was screaming, get up, you know. And he goes, oh no, that's there. Well, I forgot to tell you about that 7 I got here in my caddy bib. My dad called it the white tuxedo. And he had a beautiful shot about 20 feet, 15 feet. So he birdied, parred in, I think finished 5th, maybe shot 66 or 7 the last round. Good tournament, you know, played with Jack, top 5 in a major. We're all pretty happy afterwards. So the next week was Hilton Head. Says, I'll meet you there at 7 o'clock on Tuesday. I said, fine. There 7 o'clock on Tuesday. He hated practice rounds. It was funny. Jay hated practice rounds. And he said, oh, let's just go. I don't even want to hit balls. Let's get this over with. So being a recovering Catholic, knowing all about confessions, you know, we're walking down the first fairway and I'm thinking, you know, I got to kind of tell him what I did there on 15. I don't know, it's kind of bugging me, even though it turned out right. It wasn't the right thing to do. So I said, Jay, I got a confession to make. And he said, what, you gave me the wrong yardage on 15 on Sunday? He knew it. He said, that was actually good caddying. He said, back to your dad's thing, you gamble when you're swinging good. I was actually going to consider going forward anyway. So that was really good caddying because that's what I wanted to hear. Let's go for it. So I said, well, that's great, you know, really good. But hypothetically, what would have happened if you'd have necked it in the middle of the lake or drop kicked it? Said I wouldn't have asked you to be at Hilton Head at 7 o'clock on Tuesday morning. So that was my dumbest caddy story ever that turned out good because he was good, not because I was good. Well, had I not done that, I would have talked about, it was warm out. You know, we were in shirt sleeves. It was probably in the mid 80s. The ball goes farther. And Jay could, most people don't know this. Jay was a great athlete. And so you guys have caddied enough and played enough. People that can hit the center of the club face all the time. I don't know if you can teach someone to do that. I think that's a gift, you know, with your hands and your eyes. And he was really good at that. And so I had no doubt that he could get there, but still, you know, 257 yards back in 1986, and you're a short hitter. That's a pretty good reach, you know. But he did it. It's probably why I grew to be grateful for Wingfoot. looking back on it. I'll share this with you, and you can put this on if you want. I felt like such a failure because when I was young, I was really good, and I should have been somebody, let's say, or at least I should have had a chance. And I drank and drugged my way away from it. And I can recall going back to Wingfoot in my late 20s. I was going to play with my friends, and I would feel so less than that I would stop at the bottom of the hill and call the shop and say, tell my 3 guys that I'm sick, I'm not going to play. I was driven when I got sober to not be I didn't want my father's last few years to be the last memories of a Harmon at Wingfoot. And to think that all those years later, we were made honorary members. I mean, you want to talk about a story of sobriety, And when I went back there in October to play my first round as a member, I brought him because he understood what I was going through. And we got out of the car and he said, this must be pretty special for you. And I said, it's actually very weird. And I said, I don't mean this in a bad way, but I don't feel worthy of it. I don't mean that as a negative. I just don't know the word. Look at Eisenhower, Hogan, Jones, Casper, Claude Harmon, Arnold Palmer, Bill Harmon. It's just kind of funny. And so it was the single greatest thing that ever happened to me, because when I needed golf, the game of golf did not turn its back on me or the people in it the way I turned my back on them. And so I'll never forget it. And I said, the only thing that I would be worthy of being a member here is I don't think anybody loves the place more than me and knows what it's done for me. And, how would have I gone back in 2020 to say, I came back here to say, I love you? Because I know what it's done for me. I know my wife and I have a foundation that's given over $2.5 million to treatment centers and homeless shelters. And it's just a mom and pop show. And so, my life is so good as beyond comprehension.
Wingfoot is more grateful that you are a member, because every day there's a little bit of Wingfoot that comes off on other people. There's a little bit of Billy Harmon. There's a little bit about Butch Harmon. There's a little bit about Claude Harmon or Craig Wood.
Oh, we're your guys.
Yeah.
I always want to be 11 down to you, but I still don't like losing 2 matches to goddamn Christie. My life is so good as beyond comprehension. We're your guys.
Thanks for joining us today.
Billy Harmon.
We really appreciate your
Double
feedback.
Indemnity.
And please
Arky.
subscribe to the
Two
show
Outer.
and hit
Claude
the bell
Harmon.
icon so you get notified.
Movie Classics.
New episodes.
Mark Gable.
Hit them
Odd
hard
Job.
and hit them off.
Best 36 holes.